Pattaya City Expats Club is a non-profit social organisation and our speakers are volunteers. The club as such assumes no responsibility or liability for the professional reputation of or the quality of services provided by the speaker today.
Daddy gave me a hug, and about 36 hours later he contacts me to say he's got COVID. So I didn't pick it up and stuff, but you know, I know it. Hopefully there's going to get to the stage where we're not supposed to wear masks, but we of course follow the protocol of the Holiday Inn about masks and generally the Thai protocol. So hands up, who's here for the first time? Welcome. Oh, Lloyd, you should have come in before now. We'll get you to say hello a bit later. And I feel very privileged to introduce both these speakers. The second speaker is Dr. Andy. Is this your fourth talk at the club, I think? Yeah. And I really want to say that he goes down in history as giving the best introduction to any talk, not just in the history of the club, but that I have ever heard, because there's about 100 people in the auditorium, which we used to get pre-COVID, and he started off by saying, who here has had dengue fever? You've had, by the way, who here has had dengue fever? It's about 3 people, right? And then, so it's 100 people, 7 people put their hand up, and he said, in actual fact, there's 100 people here, 50 of you will have had dengue fever, but not know it. After that, you could have heard a pin drop. Everybody's like on the edge of their seats going, what's the story? So he might answer a question about dengue fever later. But our first talker is really a good friend of mine, lovely guy, Lloyd, and he's going to introduce very briefly to you a unique opportunity to, I'll hand it over to Lloyd. You can take your mask off on the...
Taken my mask off, so forgive me. Right, so my name is Lloyd, and I am. Oops. Can you draw me? Okay, sorry. My name is Lloyd, and I'm from the St George's Church here in Pattaya. I'd like to spend a couple of minutes just telling you about who I am and where our church is, and how you can join in if you would like, before going on to talk about the main purpose of why I'm here. I recognize that for some of you, talking about a church might not be your cup of tea. That's of course the nature of the world, but we can still be friends, you and I, since I am not a member of a gang, and I know I'm approachable. So for my part, I spent the first 20 years of my career in the UK working with homeless people in London and in Canterbury, at the front line, street homeless, rough sleepers, and talking about the causes and consequences of poverty in the UK. It is, and was and still is, easy to see how the roller coaster of life can, for so many people, result in mental and physical health issues, problems, addiction, and criminality. So after 20 years, suffice to say that I thought I was well prepared for Pattaya. I've lived here for 12 years, and until COVID, my wife Susie and I ran a reasonably successful tour business in partnership with a number of the Centara hotels here in the city. And we offered family-friendly tours and excursions. From the 12th of February, when all of the hotels were closed down in 2020, I've been teaching English online to Chinese students, and although it's not ideal, it has enabled us not to go completely over the precipice. But COVID offered me a pause, a gap between the last and the next paragraph, and I was able, in consultation with some old friends in England, to find a way to study and I now study online with Sarum College, which is based in the grounds of Salisbury Cathedral. And I learn in context thanks to St George's Church here in Patia, with a view ultimately of being an ordained priest. Right now I am a deacon with a humble grey shirt. There's a difference, you see. You have grey for a deacon, black for a priest, and purple for a bishop. At the heart of St George's is an inclusive theology with an outward-looking, global-reaching vision. Our church was born out of holiday makers and expats who visited and lived here, and they were and are from all around the world. Now this takes me on to the next part, where we start talking about the reason I'm here. Patia has an aging, retired expat community, as I'm sure many of you have had plenty of discussion about. And many of them, particularly those from the UK, I'm not so aware of the conditions of people from other parts of the world, but in the UK, for folk living abroad, their pension, their state pension, is instantly capped. It doesn't increase by the cost of living every year, or any percentage for that matter. So their health, the cost of health increases, the cost of living increases, and all the while they're trying to make way on a fixed pension. And with no free healthcare, many with no means of returning to the UK or anywhere else, and nowhere else to go, even if they did go back to the UK, they may well be considered homeless, decide to stay here. So then those geriatric expats living either with acute or chronic or terminal conditions are faced with the pitiful choice of paying for healthcare insurance and treatments and medications which they need, or paying for necessities such as food, water, or rent. In too many cases, this is no choice at all, and poverty only results in unnecessary greater pain and suffering. Now, last year I was invited to meet someone who was dying of bone cancer. He had lived in Patia for 17 years, and when I met him, he was in a bed downstairs in a bar. The shutter to the bar was open, and he was emaciated and suffering with people walking by in the traffic, because that's where he lived. He had a bar, and there was nowhere else for him to go, and he didn't have insurance, and he didn't have any money. And I'm sure some people may well say, well, you know, that's the result of choices he made. This is karma. But it was desperate, and I went to see him every day, and a friend of mine actually came to visit with me, and because this chap was imminently going to die, but he wasn't dying quickly, and he had got to the point where he was gasping for breath, and anything that we could do wasn't going to extend his life, it wasn't going to extend his suffering, but it might relieve the distress. And so a friend of ours bought an oxygen condenser for him so that he didn't have to struggle for breath. And he used it, and he was just more comfortable. We also found, actually, through the generosity of John Collinborn's auction, a hospital bed which had an electric button. So instead of him constantly being shifted up so that he could, you know, be propped up with pillows, he could press the button himself and be a little bit in control. Ultimately, that man died, and the oxygen condenser was pinged with Dettol, and all the tubing was thrown away, and we bought a new pack from Facino. And not long after that, actually a friend of mine, a friend of this club in fact, needed the oxygen condenser because he too was suffering and couldn't breathe very well, and he had been suffering for a long time from the effects of Alzheimer's. And he used the machine for about 2 months, and then he died. But he was comfortable. He wasn't suffering. And as I say, none of this is about extending people's suffering, right? As soon as when I had this conversation with people about, oh, I'm going to lend this person the machine, they were saying, oh no, but you should just let him go. This isn't life support. This is oxygen. It's just about stopping people from gasping for air, and then they can relax. And so anyway, he died in the end. And most recently, we've had a chap in Jomtien who was in the late stages of, I'm going to get the acronym wrong, and maybe Dr. Andy could help me. It's CPD. How do I say that, please, Dr. Andy? Is it CPD? Right, okay. He had advanced CPD in his lungs, and he needed oxygen, and so he had this oxygen machine, and it's given to people freely, lent to them freely. They don't have to be members of the church, they don't have to be Christian, they don't have to be anything. If they need it, then they can use it. And we've now got various bits and pieces which have been donated. So we've got the oxygen condenser, we've got the use of a wheelchair, we've got some crutches, we've got a Zimmer frame, we've got a blood pressure monitoring machine that can be used, and we have an oxygen level monitor which actually goes with the oxygen machine, the oxygen condenser. So all of that really, those experiences resulted in our church actually saying, well, this is ministry. This is the work that we need to do here and now in this community, in this parish. This is something we can do. And so the idea of these stories was really just to illustrate that the notion of healthcare equipment being bought once and not shared makes no sense. We now, as I say, have a few bits and pieces available free of charge. We do have a kind of a wish list of things that we would like to have, and all of that's available on our website, which is stgeorgespatia.com. So you can go onto that website and click on where it says the Healthcare Equipment Lending Scheme and see what our our wish list is. Now, it would be remiss of me before this august membership, having said that our church might not be your cup of tea, if I did not describe to you the cup of tea before I finish. So you may not know, but we are, as I've said before, an inclusive church. We are, as far as I know, the only church in Thailand registered with the Inclusive Church Network. And what that means is not just the doors are open to you in a passive way, but more, you are welcomed and invited inside. There may be reasons why you think you do not belong in church, and maybe that is to do with a bad experience you or someone you know had with a church, and I understand that. But let me say this: if you drink or eat too much, you are welcome. If you sleep with people you are not married to, you are welcome. If you happen to prefer one gender over another, or both at the same time, you are welcome to our church. If from time to time you have mental health issues, maybe you are bipolar or depressive, you are welcome in our church. If you have trouble making sense of your own place in the world, you are welcome. We are all on a journey, and when in the chapel you do not have to join in, you can just know that we want to accompany you on this part of the road. It is not our church's place to judge. It is our place to welcome you, to share in what we believe the church can offer all of us as sinners. And I do not mean that as a pejorative term, only a reality. The prize we believe, by trying to be the best versions of ourselves, is an eternal place in God's grace in heaven, after we have dropped off our mortal coil. We meet at the Redemptorist Chapel in the Father Ray Foundation, just off the Sukhumvit Road, down from Index, every Sunday at 3 p.m. onwards. And I leave you with these final words: be kind today. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to one another. And once a day, when you remember, perform a random act of kindness in God's name. Amen.
So, two things about that. One thing to take away, they have healthcare equipment and are building up more that you can borrow for free. Okay, so that's one. So please take that away. Okay, or if you know somebody who, for instance, needs oxygen support, etc., contact the club and go to stgeorgespatia.com website and stuff. They will make that equipment available for free for you or a friend or whoever. And if you have some equipment you don't use or no longer use, or you know that somebody's, for instance, passed on that has canes or a Zimmer frame or whatever it is, you can give it to that organisation and they will they will pass it on for free to people who can benefit from that. So that's what to take away from this talk. So you'll be available for questions later, of course. All right, so well done to the organisation for doing that, because obviously it is a needed thing. And the member he was referring to who benefited from the oxygen equipment was Morris Cass, who was known to who was a long-term member of the club, personal friend of mine, etc. So well done for what you guys do. So now I'm passing over to one of our most popular